The heat shimmered off the backcountry road, a thick wave rising from the asphalt under the late afternoon sun. 10-year-old Zuri Adams wiped sweat from her brow as she trudged home from school. Her worn backpack bouncing softly against her back. Just ahead, a sleek crimson Mustang, an unmistakable Shelby GT500, sat idle on the shoulder with its hood propped open like a yawning mouth. A man in an expensive suit paced nearby, clearly frustrated, barking into his phone. "I don't care how much the tow costs," the man snapped. "I've been stranded here for 2 hours. I've got a meeting with the state governor in less than 3. Zuri slowed, eyeing the scene cautiously. Her Aunt Carla had drilled it into her: never talk to strangers. Especially ones so far out of place in their quiet, predominantly black community 2 hours outside New Haven. But something about the desperation in his voice made her hesitate. She adjusted the strap on her backpack, feeling the familiar weight of the toolkit her Uncle Theo had given her, her favorite possession. A former mechanic, he believed every kid should know how to fix things, especially engines. "Excuse me, sir?" Zuri called, her voice soft but clear as she took a step closer. "Need help with your car?" The man spun around. Julian Cross, billionaire real estate mogul and head of Crossbridge Holdings, looked more confused than relieved. His irritation faded into something between amusement and skepticism as he took in the girl with brightly beaded braids, faded jean shorts, and a Yale t-shirt 2 sizes too big. "That's very generous of you, sweetheart," he said, forcing a polite smile. "But this is a high-performance machine. I'm gonna need a real mechanic." Zuri gave a casual shrug and walked right up to the car. "My uncle owns a garage. I've been working on engines since I could walk. I can at least take a look." Before Julian could object, she had already dropped her backpack and was peering under the hood like she owned it. There was a surprising confidence in the way she leaned forward, eyes scanning the engine block like she was reading a familiar book. "When did it start acting up?" she asked. Julian sighed. "About 40 minutes ago. The engine overheated, then just quit." "Did it smell kinda sweet? Like syrup?" He blinked. "Actually, yeah, now that you mention it." "How do you know?" "Coolant leak," Zuri said, pointing to a small puddle beneath the car that Julian hadn't noticed. "Probably the radiator hose. That's what usually causes it to overheat and shut down." Julian watched her, his curiosity growing. There was something oddly familiar in the way she furrowed her brow in concentration, in the intelligence behind her eyes. "What's your name?" he asked. Zuri Adams," she replied, extending a grease-stained hand. He shook it awkwardly. "Julian Cross. Pleased to meet you. I think I can fix it enough to get you to town," Zuri said, unzipping her backpack and pulling out a slim metal case. "Uncle Theo makes me carry an emergency kit. You never know." She found the leak, wrapped it tightly with sealant tape, then stood and dusted off her hands. "You'll still need to add water, but it should hold long enough to get you back to the main road." Julian was stunned. She had worked with the precision of someone 3 times her age. But what truly shook him was what happened next. As Zuri brushed a stray braid from her face, he caught sight of a ring on her finger, an emerald set in antique gold. It was slightly too big for her, secured with black thread wrapped tightly around the base. The moment he saw it, time froze. The emerald caught the sunlight, flickering with a familiar crescent-shaped flaw deep within the stone. It was the ring, the one he'd given to a little girl named Amira, at the Rosewood Home for Children 12 years ago, days before the orphanage was shut down under strange circumstances. A promise ring, one he never kept. "That ring," Julian said slowly, his voice cracking. "It's very unique." Zuri looked at her hand. "It belonged to my mom, my adoptive mom, Daria. She passed away last year. She always said it meant something important." Julian's thoughts were racing. "Do you know where she got it?" Zuri shook her head. "She never really said, just that it was from someone special and that one day I'd understand." Trying to stay composed, Julian offered her a ride home. She paused for just a moment, then nodded. During the short drive, he asked casual questions: where she went to school, how long she'd lived in the area, who she lived with now. "I stay with my Aunt Carla and Uncle Theo," she said. "They've taken care of me since Mom passed." Have you always lived here? Since I was about 3. Zuri said. Before that, I think I was adopted from somewhere called Rosewood. It closed after. Julian nearly swerved off the road. Rosewood? He said, stunned. Are you sure? Yeah. Why? Do you know it? Julian nodded slowly, keeping his eyes on the road. I used to. A long time ago. When they reached her modest but tidy home. Zuri thanked him and got out. But before she could shut the door, he handed her a business card. If you ever need anything at all, call me. Okay? Zuri took the card and gave a small nod, her face unreadable. Then she ran up the driveway, her backpack bouncing behind her, the emerald ring glittering in the sun. Julian sat in his car for a long moment, his hands shaking. Then he pulled out his phone. Sebastian, he said to his private investigator, I need you to dig into a girl named Zuri Adams. And I need everything you can find about Rosewood Home for Children. Fast. What Zuri couldn't possibly know as she turned back to wave one last time was that her small act of kindness had just cracked open a sealed vault of secrets. Secrets about her past, about Julian Cross, and about a forgotten promise tied to a billion-dollar empire. Julian didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his penthouse office, the city skyline behind him, scrolling through decades-old photographs and documents, everything he could find related to the Rosewood Home for Children. The orphanage had vanished almost overnight 12 years ago, under the guise of financial mismanagement. But Julian knew better. His father, Arthur Cross, had purchased the property under a shell company shortly before the closure and replaced the land with a high-end biotech research facility, the same facility now being used for Project Helix, one of Crossbridge Holdings' most ambitious ventures. At 3:17 a.m., Julian's phone buzzed. Sebastian? I've got something, the investigator said, voice tight. Zuri Adams wasn't legally adopted through official channels. There's no record of her placement in any state database. Julian leaned forward. What do you mean? I mean her adoption never happened, on paper. No name change, no court records, nothing. Her adoptive mother, Daria Adams, worked at Rosewood. She vanished around the same time it closed. Death certificate says, brake failure, but the police flagged it as suspicious. No follow-up. And the ring? Sebastian hesitated. There's a photo of you, 12 years ago. You're kneeling next to a little girl. She's holding a teddy bear. And you're holding out that ring. Julian stared at the screen in front of him. There she was. That little girl, Amira, had been part of a special group of children at Rosewood. Children flagged for their unusual aptitude. It had all started with a program his father called the Apex Initiative. Julian whispered under his breath. She's Amira. She's the girl I swore I'd come back for. He stood, grabbed his coat, and drove through the night to the place he swore he'd never return to, the Rosewood site. But there was no sign of the building anymore. In its place, a sleek, glass-walled lab, bearing the Crossbridge logo. A security guard stopped him at the gate. I'm the CEO. Julian snapped. Let me in. Back in Zuri's world, the sun rose gently over the small, white house nestled among tall oaks. In the garage behind the home, she sat hunched over an old ham radio, trying to restore its signal. The smell of grease and solder filled the air. Got it working again? Uncle Theo asked, stepping into the workshop. Almost. Just a couple of circuits left, Zuri said, her fingers moving deftly. This thing's older than you. Theo chuckled, then grew quiet. You seem distracted. Zuri. She hesitated. Uncle, do you remember the emerald ring Mom gave me? Theo nodded slowly. Of course. Daria always said it was important. I met a man yesterday. His car broke down. I fixed it. He saw the ring and acted like he'd seen a ghost. Theo's face drained of color. What man? Julian Cross. He gave me his card. Said to call him if I ever needed anything. Theo turned sharply, then glanced at the door where Aunt Carla stood. Lips pressed tightly. A heavy silence settled over the room. I think it's time we told her, Carla said. That night, in the living room lit by a single table lamp, Zuri sat between her aunt and uncle as they unfolded the truth piece by piece. Your mother wasn't just a nurse, Carla began. She was a whistleblower. She found out that Rosewood wasn't just an orphanage. Theo took over. They were running a private intelligence program. testing kids for cognitive and neurological anomalies, kids with unusual abilities. Like what? Zuri asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Like you, Carla said gently. You've always been able to see how things work. Machines, systems. It's like you were born with the knowledge. Zuri stared down at the ring. Why didn't she tell me? She was protecting you, Theo said. When Rosewood was shut down, she ran with you, faked your name, changed your records. We've been helping hide you ever since. Carla reached into a drawer and pulled out an old envelope, yellowed with time. Daria gave this to us the night she died, she said, handing it to Zuri. She made us promise to give it to you if anyone from the Cross family ever came looking. With trembling fingers, Zuri opened the envelope and unfolded the letter inside. My dearest Amira, if you are reading this, it means the past has come calling. There are things you were never meant to forget, no matter how young you were. Things about who you are, and what you're capable of. The ring is not just jewelry. It contains a key, a real one. A hidden compartment with a data chip. It holds documents, test results, blueprints. Everything they never wanted to get out. You're more than just a child they studied. You were the reason they shut everything down. Be brave. You were never meant to be hidden. You were meant to change things. As Zuri read, her hands shook. The weight of everything, of her past. Her mother's sacrifice. The secrets buried under her childhood, pressed into her like a vice. Back in the city, Julian sat at his desk, eyes locked on a newly digitized file from his father's archives. One line sent a chill through him. Project Apex, Subject 17. Amira, Extraordinary Spatial and Mechanical Intelligence. Unmonitored Potential, Relocated, Subject 17. Zuri. His phone buzzed again. Mr. Cross? Sebastian said urgently. You need to know. Someone else is asking questions about Rosewood. A journalist. Name's Elijah Monroe. He says he's found proof that children were being tracked and relocated without legal approval. And that some of them disappeared. Julian's heart pounded. Where is he now? He's already in town. He's looking for a girl with an emerald ring. Across town, a black SUV rolled to a stop across the street from Zuri's school. Two men in suits watched her walk out with her backpack slung lazily over one shoulder. That her? Has to be. The ring's right there on her finger. The driver reached for his phone. Tell Mr. Cross's father we found her. But what they didn't know was that Theo had seen them too. Sitting in his pickup, parked under a tree, he picked up his phone and dialed the number Daria had left in case things ever went wrong. Elijah Monroe, he said when the line picked up. I think it's time we talk. I've got what you're looking for. It's about Project Apex, and a girl named Amira. Julian Cross stood in the vast, echoing atrium of Crossbridge Holdings, watching the security feed from outside Zuri's school. The camera showed her walking, unaware, as two men trailed her from a distance. He slammed the monitor off. Who authorized that surveillance? He barked. His assistant looked confused. Your father's office requested it this morning. Sir, said it was part of a legacy security protocol. Julian's jaw tightened. Get me Arthur, now. But Arthur Cross had already made his move. Inside his estate, Arthur stood surrounded by files, printouts, and blueprints. He spoke calmly into a satellite phone. She has it, the ring. It's the original one we embedded the chip in. I want her brought in quietly. No mistakes. We're not losing this opportunity. Back in a dimly lit diner on the edge of town, Theo Adams sat across from Elijah Monroe. The journalist was in his late 30s, weary-eyed but alert, a recorder already on the table between them. What do you know about Project Apex? Elijah asked. Theo set down a flash drive. Not much, just that it started with kids. They tested them for enhanced intelligence, motor skills, spatial awareness. Things most people never even look for in children. And the orphanage? Rosewood? Theo's face darkened. They weren't looking to care for kids. They were looking to extract something from them. Talent, data, whatever made them special. He leaned in. Zuri, her real name's Amira, was the youngest. They didn't think she'd remember anything. But her mother did. She stole that data. The ring? It holds a full list of names, test results, the whole program breakdown. And now they know Zuri has it. Elijah's breath caught. That's the story. That's the empire breaker. Meanwhile, Zuri sat alone in her room, reading her mother's letter again and again. She turned the emerald ring in her hand, fingertips brushing the tiny seam along the band. Gently, she twisted the stone. With a faint click, the compartment opened. Inside was a microchip barely the size of a fingernail. She stared at it, heart thudding. It had waited inside that ring for 12 years. Her mother had hidden the truth in plain sight, and trusted Zuri to one day unlock it. Suddenly, there was a knock at the front door. Aunt Carla answered, and froze. 2 men in black suits stood outside. One held up a badge. Federal Compliance Division, he said. We have questions about your niece. May we come in? Zuri quickly closed the ring and slipped it back onto her finger. Her instincts screamed. She slid out the back door and ran toward the garage, heart pounding. As she slipped inside, she dialed a number from memory. Julian's business card still sat on her desk. He picked up on the first ring. Zuri? They're here. 2 men. Black suits. They say they're federal agents. Don't talk to them, Julian said sharply. Get somewhere safe. Do you have the ring? Yes. Good. I'm on my way. In less than 20 minutes. Julian's silver car pulled up outside her garage. Zuri jumped in, and they sped off. Behind them, one of the suited men made a call. She's with him now. Julian's picked her up. Arthur Cross listened on the other end, his voice a cold whisper. Then we move to containment. It's time my son learns who's in charge. As Julian drove, Zuri clutched the ring tightly. I don't understand, she said. Why me? Why was I so important to your father? Julian glanced over. You were subject 17. You scored higher than anyone else on the Apex scans. My father didn't want to lose you. He thought you could be weaponized. Weaponized? Julian nodded. He talked about predictive intelligence, engineering foresight. You could look at a broken system and know how to fix it before it even fully broke. Not just machines, structures, patterns, people. That scared him, but it also excited him. Zuri went quiet, her thoughts spinning. What about you? She finally asked. Why do you care now? Julian's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Because I failed you once. 12 years ago, I made a promise to come back for you. And I never did. Now, I'm trying to make it right. At the same time, in a high-rise conference room overlooking the city, Arthur Cross held a secret meeting with members of the Crossbridge Holdings board. On a large monitor, a rendering of a new biotech product was displayed, NeuroGrid, an implantable chip designed to enhance cognitive performance. What none of the attendees realized was that the data used to develop NeuroGrid had originated from the Apex initiative. From Zuri, from children like her. This product is our legacy, Arthur declared. What matters now is control. Everything else, sentiment, family ties, even legal roadblocks, are distractions. Meanwhile, Julian and Zuri met up with Elijah Monroe and Theo in a secluded cabin on the outskirts of the city. They laid out what they had: files from Daria, the chip from the ring, and Elijah's growing body of research. This chip, Elijah said, holding it gently with tweezers, contains everything: test results, experiment logs, even names of kids who didn't make it. Zuri swallowed hard. What do we do with it? Julian looked at her. That's your choice. Zuri stared at the glowing laptop screen, the cursor blinking in the center. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. You were never meant to be hidden. You were meant to change things. I want the world to see it, she said finally. Every last piece of it. Julian nodded, then turned to Elijah. Then we go public. Immediately. At that moment, Arthur Cross received an emergency alert. Someone had accessed the Apex records. His hands trembled as he looked at the IP address. Zuri, he snarled. He picked up the phone. Shut down everything. Wipe the backups. And find them. But it was already too late. Across social media, news platforms, and government inboxes, files began appearing. Anonymous leaks, encrypted documents, videos, audio recordings of board meetings, Daria's handwritten notes, photos of children, test results. Within hours, #Apex Files was trending worldwide. Whistleblower protections were invoked. Investigations launched. Reporters surrounded Crossbridge Holdings headquarters. Shareholders demanded answers. Zuri sat quietly in the cabin, watching it all unfold in real time. I thought I'd feel scared. She whispered. But I don't. I feel free. Julian looked at her, awe in his eyes. You just dismantled an empire. She smiled faintly. No, we all did. Arthur Cross paced his private office like a caged lion. The world outside collapsing faster than he could spin excuses. Screens around him flashed with breaking news banners. Crossbridge Holdings implicated in human testing scandal. Hashtag Apex Files reveal secret program targeting children with unique cognitive talents. Emerald Ring used to smuggle data that exposes billion-dollar empire. He threw a crystal tumbler against the wall. Glass exploded like his legacy. A notification chimed on his encrypted laptop. He opened it. A video. Zuri, sitting calmly at a simple desk. My name is Zuri Johnson. She began, her voice clear and unwavering. 12 years ago, I was taken from an orphanage under the name Amira. I didn't know my past until recently. What I found out changed everything. Julian sat beside her, silent but supportive. My mother was a nurse. She found out that some of the children in Rosewood were part of something called Project Apex. Not because they were sick, but because they were gifted. And instead of nurturing those gifts, powerful men saw ways to profit from them. She held up the emerald ring. This ring was her message to me. Inside it was the proof. Names, experiments, secrets. For years, they thought they buried it. But here it is. Across the globe, people watched. Some with tears, some with rage, most with awe. Zuri continued. We're not just statistics in a file. We're human. And it's time people were held accountable for treating us like tools instead of children. In the Crossbridge Holdings boardroom, executives began resigning mid-meeting. Major partners pulled out within hours. Government officials launched criminal probes. And Arthur Cross was summoned to testify before Congress. But Arthur didn't intend to go quietly. In a desperate attempt to regain control, he fled to a private airstrip on the coast. Armed security surrounded his car as he stepped onto the tarmac. The jet's engine roared to life. Just as he reached the steps, a black SUV cut across the runway. Screeching to a stop, Julian stepped out, followed by Zuri, Theo, and federal agents. It's over, Julian said simply, holding up an arrest warrant. Arthur stared at him, bewildered. You would really turn against your own blood? Julian's voice was steady. You made me choose, between power and people, between silence and justice, between your legacy and mine. Zuri stepped forward. You tried to erase me, she said softly, but I learned how to rebuild myself. And now, I'm helping others do the same. The agents closed in. Arthur was handcuffed without a word, his face hollow, all pretense gone. You were right about one thing, Julian said quietly. Some gifts can't be bought. They have to be earned. 3 months later, the Crossbridge name was officially dissolved. Julian used what remained of the company's assets to create a reparations fund for children affected by Project Apex. He and Zuri co-founded the Amira Initiative, named after her birth identity, a name finally reclaimed. Zuri, now a national figure, used her voice not for fame, but for impact. She spoke at summits, schools, and tech conferences about ethical innovation and the protection of gifted youth. One fall afternoon, she stood at the groundbreaking ceremony for the Amira Center for Innovation and Healing, a gleaming facility rising where Rosewood Orphanage once stood. Survivors of Apex stood beside her, young children with bright eyes and untapped potential. Doctors, mentors, former journalists, even government officials. In the front row, Aunt Carla held tissues. Beside her, Julian stood tall, not as a CEO, but as an ally. Zuri stepped to the podium. When I was 10, I stopped to help a stranger fix his car. I didn't know then that it would lead me here. But I do know this. I carry more than just my mother's memory. I carry her purpose, her courage, her belief that broken things, broken systems, can be rebuilt better than before. The crowd rose in applause. 1 year later, Arthur Cross, now prisoner number 1,740,928, sat in a sterile room. No windows, no empire, only silence. On a dusty table lay a newspaper. Zuri Johnson named youngest person on Time's most influential list. He looked away. Back at the Amira Center, Zuri wandered the labs late one night. In a quiet corner, A little girl named Layla hunched over a broken 3D printer. Frustration on her brow. Zuri knelt beside her. Having trouble? Layla nodded. It's jammed. I've tried everything. Zuri smiled. Mind if I take a look? She adjusted a few wires. Showed Layla a trick with the feeder gears. And in moments, the machine came to life again. Layla's eyes lit up. How did you learn that? I used to fix things too. Zuri said with a grin. Still do. As the printer buzzed back to life, Layla leaned into her side. You think I'll be as good as you one day? Zuri hugged her gently. You'll be even better. Epilogue. A statue now stands in front of the Amira Center. Zuri is a child, kneeling by a broken engine, hand outstretched. The inscription reads, Every great revolution starts with fixing one small thing. The ring, now encased in bulletproof glass inside the center's museum, glints under the spotlight. Once a symbol of secrets and shadows, it now marks the beginning of a movement. A new generation rises, not shaped by exploitation, but by truth, guidance, and love. And the world? It begins to listen.